Let us run a container. Let us run docker run -itd image called nginx. Nginx is a web server like HTTPD. So I'm running this Nginx image. Nginx image now will be downloaded from Docker Hub and it will run. This Nginx service will be running on port 80 by default. Let me give some name to the container. Let's say test5 is the container name. And this Nginx image is on Docker Hub. You can go to Docker Hub. Here let us check for Nginx image. You can see all the details of this Nginx image, which is official image. Click this and you can see how this image works. In this image, service is running on port 80, the default port. So let us run this image. See, because image was not there locally, it was downloading from the hub and started the container. First, let us check the list of images. See, Nginx is downloaded from Docker Hub and let's see the active container by name test5. Yeah, this is coming from the image Nginx, and if you see, service is running on port 80 inside this container test5. In the previous lecture, we have learned that whenever we are running containers, by default they go to the default bridge network unless otherwise mentioned. We didn't specify the network. So by default it goes to bridge network, default bridge network. Let us inspect the container and check that. Docker inspect test5. So you can see it has got attached to default bridge network. So we understood that containers within the same network, same bridge network can communicate with one another. But what about the Docker host? Docker host is nothing but the machine VM on which we are running containers. So we are running test5 on this demo 5. So the containers within the network are communicating. How about the connection between a host to the container? So let's see. Here services are running on port 80. First let's get the IP address of the container. We can get the IP address of the container by inspecting the container. When we inspect, it will return a lot of information in the form of JSON. And here is the IP address. This is the IP address of the container. Now, let us curl on this IP address on port 80. I should see Nginx. Yeah, here we can see, if you see this page, Nginx web server is successfully installed. Means yes, service is running inside the container on port 80. Now, because the container is running on this host called demo, can we access this port from the host? Is it possible? Let's check. Let's get the IP address of the host demo by the command ipadder show. Here is the IP address of the host, internal IP of this VM instance on Google Cloud. Now, if we try to curl this command on any port, let's say 80, can we see Nginx? No, because see, your Docker host is in a different network and your containers in the bridge network are in a different network. It works like your containers in the bridge network would be working like a private isolated network for security concerns. So no content, no data, no services from the container can be accessed from the outside world from this Docker host. So we cannot access. But let's say we don't need to access entire container, but can we make certain ports of the container accessible from the host? Yeah, that is possible through a concept called port forwarding or port exposing. And this can be done when you start your container. So if you want to enable certain ports to be accessed from the Docker host, means certain ports of the container to be accessed from the host, create a container again, means I'm starting a new container by name test4, again from the same Nginx, but with a publish flag or -p flag. So that what happens, the port on which your service is running, meaning port 80 of the container test4, can be accessible from the Docker host demo on a random port. That's called port forwarding or port exposing or publishing the ports. By using this p flag, it will create a firewall rule which maps a container port to a port on the Docker host. Means a port on test4 will be mapped to some random port on this Docker host called demo. Let us run this. Now let us check the active containers with Docker PS. So here you can see earlier test5 container where we didn't use p flag, where ports were not published. Inside the container on port 80 service is running, but it's not accessible from Docker host. But now the port 80 of the container test4 was forwarded or published to a port called 32768 on the Docker host. Meaning, if you hit the Docker host, get the IP address of the Docker host of the Docker of the demo colon 32768, we should see Nginx. So let's see. Can you see that? So that's how you can check from the command line, or because it's a VM instance, it has got external IP. Get this external IP and check it on the browser 32768. We can see Nginx. On VM instances, we'll be having two IPs. Internal IP is if you want to connect within the Google Cloud platform. If you want to connect from external environment, here I want to connect from the Windows machine, my local computer. So there we can use external IP. So I am seeing Nginx, meaning this particular port is available inside the container. This is how you can access certain ports from the Docker host to the container through port forwarding.